All right, so we're here. I'm here in the mall right now, about to go see a movie, Captain America: Brave New World. Um, but I wanted to read Exodus 3, and I wanted to get through it. I started reading it earlier, but I didn't have time to finish it. So Exodus 3, we see God remembering His people, and remembering the promises that He made to their fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. You see that repeatedly in this chapter. And Moses, of course, now Moses is the one who's witnessing all of this. He's the one who's hearing all of this. He's the one who's receiving all of this. This is a man who, he's been living in the desert for a long time. He grew up as an Egyptian, because he was raised by Pharaoh's daughters, and this has got to be like, why now? Why now, Lord? But God's timing is always perfect. His timing is always perfect. God is here now to rescue His people, and the people have clearly forgotten who He is. They have forgotten the promises that God has made to them, to their grandfathers before them. As we know, generations have passed since Joseph had rule over the land in Egypt alongside Pharaoh. So the Hebrews are all they really know, these generations of Hebrew people, is just slavery, just hard slavery. And now Moses is going to be the one to go tell them, no, you have a God. You have a God who has made this promise to you, this wonderful promise. There's a land flowing with milk and honey, as the Lord said, which means it's a good land. It's sweet. It's an easy land. It's a beautiful place. It's paradise. It's paradise for them. And of course, He's referring to the land that He had promised to Abraham, and he had and the land where they had dwelled before the famine, when they had to go to Egypt. But now they've been there for so long, and God's like, all right, it's time for you to leave and come out. And I think about, like, well, why couldn't, after the famine was over, why couldn't they just return to their land? Why couldn't they just return to their land? And I think that this is one of those things where I think about my walk with Christ. I think about my relationship with God. So let's think about the Israelites and their relationship with God. And let's think about our relationship with Christ. Now, they're going wherever the Lord tells them to go, right? They're of course, that's they're following, and they're living with Joseph, and they're getting fed, and they're getting taken care of, and things start to get comfortable. Things start to get comfortable for them, and in their comfort, they forget who their God is. They forget the promises that God made to them. They forget the plan that God had ordained for them. They're just kind of off on their own now, doing that in Egypt. So instead of returning, Jacob knew. Jacob's like, I want to get buried. I want to get buried back where my fathers were buried. And the rest of the nation of Israel, all the brothers and all their descendants, they just kept living there. They just got comfortable. I think of how we could easily become comfortable in our walk with Christ. How God can make, God shares a promise with us. He shares a vision for our life. He shares, he shares what He intends to do with us. And then something happens, and we get caught up in that, and now we're just kind of going through the motions, and we forget the plans that God has made for us. Well, God has not forgotten His plans. And Moses, He's calling upon Moses to rescue His people, because what happens is, when we forget God's plans, when we forget who our God is, this is what happens. We start to, God reminds us of our need for Him. God reminds us of the need that we have in Him. And that's what He's done here. He's reminded the Hebrew people of their need for Him. And He's here to rescue them now out of slavery. So I'm going to stop there. Exodus 4 has some important stuff that I want to get through. So I'm going to finish up here, and then I'll see you for Exodus 4.